Hello and welcome back to Chant Talk. I'm Patrick Torsel, and today in our 6th episode of the series we're going to discuss a topic which is near and dear to my heart, and that is an introduction to organ improvisation around Gregorian chant themes. So we're going to take the information and knowledge that we've discussed in previous episodes about accompanying Gregorian chant and learn how that can be used to aid us in developing simple improvisations. And the beautiful thing about these improvisations is that you can use them to fill various different slots in the liturgy where you have a little bit of extra time, for example, at offertory or during communion or even as preludes or postludes. And not only then does it allow you to fill those spaces, because when you're improvising you can play for as long or as short as you need to, but it also allows you to really tie in your playing and the music that you're playing to the liturgy itself, especially if you choose to improvise around the proper chants for the day, or for example, if it's a Marian feast, perhaps you choose a Marian hymn that you can improvise around. So we'll take a look at a couple of different chants and see how we can begin to develop some improvisational ideas just from what we've learned in learning to accompany Gregorian chant from the square notes. Let's head to the organ. So keeping in mind that this is just going to be a kind of an introduction, I'm going to try and keep this on a very basic level today, and maybe at some time in the future we can get into some more advanced ideas and concepts on how to really fully develop an improvisation. So today I'm not really going to be talking about a fully developed improvisation. When I say that, I mean an improvisation that really takes into account perhaps a particular form, like a canon or a fugue or a toccata or something like that. Really today we're going to think a little bit more free form for the sake of simplicity, and because what I'm really trying to drive at today is how to use improvisation in those short filler moments during the Mass when you can use the chant to your advantage in improvisation. So I just opened up my library of music and pulled a random set of propers out, and so this we're going to look at the communion for the Sunday within the octave of the Ascension in the extraordinary form. So it's Pater cum essem cum eis, etc. And it's in mode 4. So if we're going to do a simple improvisation around chant, let's first think about some of the things that we talked about in the accompaniment instruction for mode 4. And what did we really kind of glean from that? I think that the big takeaways were that it has this sort of mysterious sound where it's ending constantly on what our ear might hear as a leading tone, right? Because mi is the final. So we always have this sort of, we're ending on the mi, fa, re, da, 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 da. And let's see how this one ends. Alleluia, alleluia. Right, so it's got that almost mysterious sound. And what chords? And these chords are going to be really important in our improvisation. We have to remember what chords we identified as being sort of the bread and butter of mode 4. And I believe we saw quite a lot of Re minor, Mi minor, La minor, and then we also see sometimes Fa major and Do major. I think those are really the primary chords that we have, but the mode 4 definitely has a certain minor tonality to it, if we want to use the term. So we're going to revolve a lot around those chords and that kind of modal, mysterious, keeping in mind that sense of ending on mi that sounds like this unresolved leading tone. Now, the first basic improvisation technique I want to show you, really, it's very simple. I think it's pretty accessible to anybody, and that is playing the chords for the chant and then playing the melody as a solo in the pedal line, pausing between each sort of larger phrase and doing just a very short improvisation on the manuals. Let me show you a little bit of what I mean. So at the beginning of this communion, let me just sing the melody for you so you know what we're working with here. Pater, comesem cum eis, cum ego servaba meos quos dedisti mihi. Botched a couple of the rhythms in there, but that's the kind of general sound that we're working with. Now let me show you what I'm talking about here. And if you're interested in what I'm doing with the registration here, I'm just going to be using a viol and viol celeste on the swell as the accompaniment, and then an 8-foot octave or an 8-foot principal to play the melody in the pedal. I'm going to start on, let's see, this starts on a Fa. I think I'll start on a Re minor chord, and I'm doing this kind of in key, so it'll be starting on a D minor. I'm just going to play the chord. Maybe a suspension, and a resolution, and then we start the melody in the pedal. Drop the melody out of the pedal, and even just repeat in the manual the end of the phrase. Work to the next chord. Continuing that melody in the pedal line. We'll drop the melody out of the pedal. Improvising manual, again leading it maybe even just to that repetition of the melody. Back to the melody. And so on and so forth. And the chords I'm using, which I'll put on screen here for you, are just the chords that I would play if I were accompanying the chant. So we take what we learned in the video on accompanying the mode, we apply it, and again, just like when you're learning to accompany the modes, when you're learning to improvise over them, maybe go ahead and write in your chords that you're going to use right on the score, so that it's just kind of a helpful reminder, maybe so you don't have to think about quite as much when you're trying to improvise over it. The idea, again, though, just like learning to accompany, is that over time you no longer have to do that, and you just open up the chant as I've done here, and you can improvise over it because you already know mentally what chords you're going to go to. So that's kind of one method, and I'm going to go ahead and play through an improvisation over that, very simple, all the way through this chant, just so that you can hear an example of what I'm talking about, and we'll move on to another chant after that. that is that it keeps the spirit of the day's liturgy intact if you're taking the communion or the offertory or the introit or some chant for the day. But you can cut it at any spot that you need to. I mean, even if you only played the very beginning. Fine to end there if that's all the time you needed. I mean, that was kind of a laughably short improv, but the idea is you can do that according to the needs. Okay, let's jump into another technique, and that would be, I think what I'm going to do is take a look at the Solemn Salve Regina here, which is a Marian antiphon, and maybe take a look at how we can improvise around the melody rather than simply playing or doubling or playing the melody in the pedal line. So for this, I think I'll leave my celeste and the string on the swell, but I want a nice kind of solo flute in the grate here. It's a roar flute on this instrument, and just a nice soft 16-foot in the pedal. So what we're going to do here is, in the left hand, we'll be accompanying, again, same idea as before, we're just going to use the chords that we would use to accompany this chant, but then in the right hand, we're going to improvise around the melody, and by around the melody, I mean, we're going to use the melody as kind of the basis, and then play some notes around it and that lead back to it. I think you'll see what I mean, but we're always keeping the melody of the chant in place. Now, one more thing that I'm going to do differently this time is that rather than using the free Gregorian rhythm true to the chant as I did last time, this time we'll meter it. How about a 4-foot flute? Now, principle. Repeated the line in the pedal. So that could easily be developed into a much more kind of complete thought as an improvisation, if you will. But I hope you could see the notion there of just, you've got the melody, you have it on the page, maybe you know it by heart, something like this, for example, so you can think about the melody, but instead of just playing the melody, you're playing around with the melody. So instead of just, you might have, right? And then maybe we have, so you're playing around with the melody, keeping the sense of the piece in mind. Obviously you're keeping the mode because, again, basically we were just playing with the chords that we would have been using to accompany the piece, We're essentially just using those same chords to improvise around it. So I think I'm going to leave it at that for this introduction. Two methods. Method one is play the chords and play the melody as a solo in the pedal. And then maybe a little. Versus method two, which was to play an accompaniment and then play around the melody in the right hand. You could do it the other way too, by the way. You could play the accompaniment in the right hand and play around the melody in the left. So there's two really simple ways to get you started improvising around chants that you've already learned to accompany. We'll definitely develop this idea a lot further in some future episodes, but for now, play around with this, practice with it. Let me know if it works. Let me know if it doesn't work. Let me know if you want to see more. In the meantime, thanks for joining us in this 6th episode of Chant Talk, and we'll see you next time. God bless you.